What's up, guys? Aaron Miles here with the Daily Mileage. Ryan Miles is still a little bit sick, so I will be filling in for him. And today I just kind of want to talk about the ban list, its implications on the format, that kind of thing. So, obviously it's kind of hard to tell what the format is going to look like. One, because we're getting a new set. Two, because if you took Shahrazad out of the last format, what did it even look like? You know, we don't really have a good sample size because, like, there was no solid number. I mean, there was, like, Kirik, but I don't think Kirik was necessarily the second best deck of the format. I think it was just, if you built to beat Scheherazade, then you weren't built to beat Kirik. So any rogue deck just kind of got squashed under that, and like Kirik could take games off of Scheherazade, but like if you take Scheherazade out of the meta and then like we have access to just build full anti-Kirik decks, I don't think Kirik stays on top. Where, like Scheherazade did, like you build an anti-Scheherazade deck, Shahrazade's probably still going to beat you a number of times. It was that way in Fox format. Everybody knew that the format was a triangle of Fox, Prisia, anti-Fox, and a lot of good Fox players found that it was actually relatively easy to just side in a couple of cards, or even like main deck one or two cards, and just beat all of the anti-Fox players. So what I'm trying to say is that the Force Will community doesn't always know like what actually beats something. And I saw something in the US group asking like, oh, you know, now that Shahrazade's gone and the format's opened up a little bit more, you know, do you think we could see things like Welser or like Tigris, Shayla, Kirik, all these new rulers that we've seen? The answer is no. It's a flat no. We're gonna break something. You know, the pro players are known for that. We're fucking dicks, dude. We take what looks like it's gonna be a fun and open meta and we close it again within a week. And it's possible that, like, you know, the things that you complain about at the beginning aren't the things you're going to complain about a month later. If you look back to January 2017 format, it was, you know, Fox came out and it completely ran the national scene. And then a month later, everybody complains about Fox and Dark Alice, and then a month later, there are 0 Fox or Dark Alice in top 8. It's all Feetsing, Valtu, and Lumia. So my point is, people are still going to complain. And yeah, complaining about Shahrazad was definitely justified. Like, you shouldn't have those kinds of numbers of a ruler topping, and I don't really care about the color spread of it. Like, it was all the same fucking deck for the most part. But I don't think we're going to see, like, a very wide spread of decks going forward. I think Rhea still doesn't look very good. And the problem with that is Mystery... So the problem with Rhea is that Mystery Counter generation has always been her struggling point. Like, she's always had good support cards that remove Mystery Counters. The problem is getting more Mystery Counters. And throughout the entire cluster, we have never gotten a good card that puts Mystery Counters on accidentally. You know what I mean? Like, we've got cards that just put on Mystery Counters. We've got, like... I think the Grim attacks and puts on a Mystery Counter, but those are more like... that's more of an IML card than a Rhea card in my head. And sure, you could like play it and flip it in Rhea, but my point is, like, I don't think Rhea is coming in, especially with that garbage sealed ability that we all saw. That was the most disappointing thing that I could possibly imagine. I think looking forward, the meta's looking like Lumia Rachel, you know, that thing that we all were all terrified. Like, that's another thing, Lumia Rachel. Last format, everybody knew Lumia Rachel was the best deck, and then boom, it's Shahrazad, you idiots. How could you ever think it was Lumia Rachel? But now that Shahrazad's gone, it's probably actually Lumia Rachel. And then, you know, a lot of people have dicked around with, like, Imul, and I think that Imul's, like, a pretty decent counter to Lumia Rachel, so we'll probably see those two, like, fighting for a top spot. FoW, I don't think is going to make a comeback, just because I do still expect Last Days of a Powerless Dragonoid to be side decked in pretty much everything green. Because I do think Kirik's going to be a good deck. I just don't think it's going to be like a tier 0 oppressive deck. You know what I mean? I think that it is a well countered deck. So the thing with Shahrazad and it being so dominant was that it was so hard to counter. It was so versatile. There were so many things you could do in that deck, so many different playstyles that you could take from game to game to game. Kirik doesn't have that. Kirik either hits you in the face or it doesn't, and it loses. Like, there's no... Like, there are control builds for Kirik, but your Kirik aggro deck can't just turn on the control switch and hope to win a game like that. I mean, it'll work in some games, but it's not like across the format like Shahrazad could. Like, Shahrazad could either aggro you out by, like, dropping a fucking turn 3 10-10 in Ava, because, you know, it had to be turn 3 before you could get all 5 stories, so don't fight me on that one. And, like, that was, all of a sudden, it's an aggro deck. And then they, like, draw 1 Ruin stories, and boom, they're back to a control deck, because they flipped their stories back down. They started looping Approach. Kirik doesn't have anywhere near that kind of versatility. And Reflect was the same way. Like, you could go from, like, pumping things to, like, just filtering to searching, like, burn spells or just countering spells. Like, those are decks that could just, on the drop of a hat, just change their entire playstyle. Fox could do it to a lesser degree, but for the most part, Fox was just, like, degenerate in a different way. So I don't think, like, any deck that we are going to have looking forward can just change its playstyle at the drop of a hat and kind of take over the format like we've seen previously. But I do think people are going to be disappointed in the kind of spread that they see, and I don't think that should be anything new to them. Like, the casual deck, that, like the Panda deck that you have won your locals with in New Frontiers, is not going to win a Grand Prix. I guarantee it. Except Cluster. I do think Pandas are good in Cluster. That's a whole different story. My point is, I don't want people to look forward too hopefully and go, oh, Shahrazad's gone. All these great ideas that I've had are now free to flourish, and then they're not, dude. I'm gonna play Lumia Rachel and I'm gonna smack the shit out of you, like, you know what I mean? And I think that, so Featsing, this ruler that's over to my right now, kind of where does she fall into the format, right? She looks very good on paper until you realize that, like, it's all one ability and you can just lorate that, and then you have to, like, think about what this deck is going to look like, right? So Featsing is like what I call a generic good ruler. We've had generic good rulers in the past. Shahrazad and Reflect to an extent were generic good rulers, but they had overwhelmingly powerful support that was not generic, that made them very good. Featsing doesn't have anything like that. Featsing's support is pretty widespread. Like, the chants don't interact with each other too much, right? Like, they're just generically good cards that all happen to share a chant type. And she has, like, one Resonator, but that's not even, like, a Featsing card. That is a Aura card. And, like, her build-up's pretty slow. Like, you can't just, like, turbo flip this ruler, because, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, draw 2 cards and untap 3 stones and, like, get 2 4/4s. That's an ability that's good in everything. Other generic rulers that we've had are, like, Gil 1, Flute, Charlotte to an extent, and Zero. Zero is, like, my biggest example of a generic good ruler. You saw at top 8 a couple of Grand Prix very sparingly in a very specific counter-meta type style. Generic good rulers, like, just don't take off. I never realized how tied into your ruler your deck building is. Like, Lumia is not a generic good ruler. You need strong enter abilities, or strong leave the field abilities, or at least mana dorks. And I think you need a combination of mana dorks and strong enter the battlefield abilities. You know, Fox was, like, powerful, but not like a generic deck, because it had to be green-black. Like, that's not generic, you know what I mean? Like, you could play Zero in anything. Any kind of deck that you want to play, like Angels, Death and Taxes, all this kind of stuff. It's how I talked about Shahrazad and Wanderer on the last daily mileage that I did. You, like, think of a deck type and you're like, oh, I don't have a ruler for it. Then you just slap one of these generic good rulers on it. And the problem is, if you are, like, jamming a deck together and you're like, oh, this is, like, a pretty good deck, I just don't know what ruler I want to play, that's a bad deck. Your deck is so tied into what ruler you're playing. And Featsing, like, you can't just build a deck and be like, oh, I'm going to play it in Featsing, because there's probably not any auras in it then. And these auras are going to take up so much deck space. It's just, like, such a clunky way to play Force Will. Which brings me into another point. So Trueblade got banned. This is just kind of like a rant video. There's really, like, no rhyme or reason to what I'm talking about here, but I hope that, like, I make some points that resonate with people, is, I guess, the point of this video. So Trueblade got banned, and that basically means that Sacred Elf can come back into the format. And trying to build decks, you know, like we were trying to build before the ban list, and, like, just operating, all we were really doing was, like, operating under the assumption that, like, Shahrazad would no longer be a functioning deck, so we didn't even think about, like, throwing Sacred Elf in the deck, and all of a sudden we've got, like, 40 card decks with, like, 12 cards on standby that we want to play. Sacred Elf just doesn't make the cut. The card quality of Force Will has gone up so much, the power creep has gone so high, and by that I don't mean, like, oh, there's everything that's overpowered, you can't run Sacred Elf anymore. I mean, Sacred Elf doesn't do anything. And we have so many cards that do things now, that it's really hard to find room for a card that doesn't do anything. And anybody who's ever top-decked a Sacred Elf anytime past, say, turn 5 knows what I'm talking about. And, like, now you have things to supplement that. Like, I don't know that ramping 1 mana is that good. Like, I think 3 drops are really good, so it might find its way in. But for the most part, like, I don't think I'm impressed with Sacred Elf. I don't think he's actually going to be able to weasel his way back in, even in the absence of Trueblade. So, you know, I'm curious to see what this Featsing deck is going to look like. I'm obviously going to try and build something for it, but I'm not super hopeful. The auras are just so weird to, like, put into a deck. That's what I'm talking about with card quality, like Sacred Elf. It's a low quality card. These auras are relatively, like, low quality cards. Like, untap a J Resonator is good, but, like, it's hard to put that into a deck and go, yeah, that looks good, without having a specific combo built around it. Kind of like Rapid Growth. Like, you don't just put Rapid Growth in a deck. Like, we did it because we were trying to dodge True Blade, but you don't just put it in and go, yeah, maybe one game I'll, like, double Rapid Growth and kill somebody. You don't just put these auras in the deck and be like, yeah, maybe one game I'll just untap my J-Res and kill somebody. Like, you have to have a focal point of the deck. You have to have cards that facilitate the strategy. And that card doesn't facilitate anything except, like, fucking IU. And if you're trying to, like, turbo flip your Feed Sing and just dome somebody with it twice because you're playing 4 of this aura, why are you playing Feed Sing? Like, she takes some ramp-up time. I think that she's actually a pretty well-balanced ruler, now that we kind of get, like, into the meat and potatoes of her, I guess, is the phrase that I was looking for. I don't think that's the phrase I was looking for, but that's what I'm going to say. And, like, having a singular enter ability that is shut down by Lorite, and having a ramp-up time, and having abilities that don't facilitate any specific strategy without having to play the auras, I don't think she's going to find her way into the meta. But, you know, we'll see. I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. That kind of stuff. So anyway, for the Daily Mileage, I am Aaron Miles, and we'll see you guys on Monday.